All right, so thank you very much, Mary, for the intro and putting this together. Let me lift this up a little. I probably don't need a microphone. I can probably just yell. But what I love about Evolve Law is Mary's intuition and instincts in terms of, and by the way, don't start the clock yet. I'm not on the clock, okay? This is a compliment for you, so I'm not on the clock. What I love about Mary is the people that she pulls together. And every single event that I've ever been to, there's always been some unique or interesting opportunity, as big or as small as it's been. There's always been somebody there and some really meaningful engagement or experience. And we just had one of those conversations earlier that we wanted to have, and I'm sure that there are going to be, and actually that was the second one, and I'm sure there's going to be more. And I love the people that she pulls together in these groups, and I'm fascinated to hear from the panel later. But let me jump into my Darwin talk that I call Time is the New Green. And as somebody who loves people and loves talking, and some of my colleagues would say love the sound of my own voice, this was a good pet project for me because I got to start thinking about things that I can really be more efficient and more effective. And at Legal Talk Network, which is one of our companies which was mentioned, we have a unique seat at the table because anyone who you think about that is doing unique or interesting things in legal, we get the opportunity to meet them, to sit with them, to interview them, to get to know them. And that front row seat that we have at those experiences have totally changed my life. And what I've come to realize is that change is coming, whether you want to or not. And I firmly believe, and that's what's exciting about this event, is that Access to Justice, or A to J, if you're in the cool club, is going to be the engine driving this change. And out of necessity, we believe that opportunity comes from necessity, and you'll be setting the model for all other legal to follow or to become extinct because you're going to force this adoption and embrace these new ways to deliver legal services. So I have a question that I wanted to ask, and it's some basic math. You guys can probably do this in your head. But 3 minutes a day, 365 days a year, equals, and this is probably going to be startling, 18 hours in a year. And I did a little more math on that because I have a calculator and I can. If you live to 118 and you don't start optimizing your time until you're 18, that's 1,800 hours. See how I did that? 1,800 hours over the course of your life. But in a year, 18 hours. So that means if you have a slow computer that takes time to upload and get started, or if there's other little tasks that you're looking at and you're not finding a way to optimize those, you need to, because it adds up to a big amount of time over the year and over your life. Well, there's a company called Blockbuster, and I was driving with my family. We were staying in Madison, Wisconsin over the summer. I was driving with my son, and we drove by a video store. And he said, "Dad, what's that?" He's 9. I said, "That's a video store." He says, "What do you do there?" I said, "Well, let me tell you what we used to do." And this was this story that my parents told me, the uphill both ways in the snow with, a heavy pack on your shoulders. This was, we'd get in our car, we'd drive to Blockbuster, we'd park, we'd go through a maze of aisles, we'd get a case, we'd bring that case up to the front counter. While we were waiting in line, we'd get some candy. We'd get up to the front of the line and come to find out we'd had a past due balance that was actually higher than the entire cost of the whole video. Then we showed them the case that we had, and they said, "I'm sorry, we don't have the video for that case." And then we went back around and started all over again. Ate the candy we bought some more overpriced candy, checked out, got home, put it in the VCR, and come to find out the people ahead of us hadn't rewound it tape. So then you rewind it, you watch, and you repeat, and you start the whole process over. And you want to see a 9-year-old dumbfounded? Tell them that that's what we used to do just to get a video. But that's happening in legal. And because of our front row seat, we're on the road all the time, talking to people, seeing people, and we come across people that are running their practices and running their firms using WordPerfect, using Word, using Excel. I don't mean using these as tools. I mean they're running their practices for intake, for billing, for communication, for keeping track of it, for their accounts. And we all know there's a better way. So for Blockbuster, there were these companies. And Blockbuster failed to innovate. And these companies came in and they said, "We're going to deliver a better experience." And guess what? You don't have to go through that crappy thing that a 9-year-old's going to be dumbfounded by, watching you go through and figure out all the pain and friction that it took. Well, that's happening in legal as well. And thanks to Mary and the people that we meet, part of her organization, and the people that we see on the road at all the conferences that we're covering, there are firms that are using software to its potential. They're using AI, blockchain, chatbots. They're making data-based decisions, not just guessing or, like the weather changes. What should we do this week? Or what tool should we use? They're making those with sophistication and Moneyball for legal. I mean, it's crazy what's here and available and accessible. Me personally, the tools that I've used are up on the screen right now, and I'll share these slides after. But as I become mindful of my time and how I use it, I've used technology to its advantage, and I've tried to think, is there a better way with small and large tasks that I'm doing? Some of these tools up here you may be familiar with, some of them not. X.AI, show of hands, has anybody heard of that tool? Okay. This is an artificial intelligent bot that will schedule meetings for you. So gone are the days of 18 emails back and forth trying to find a time. You CC your bot on this. They do all of that for you. And then what you do is you get an invite accepted that all you just have to do is yes in your calendar. I like Costco. Who doesn't, right? Buying in bulk, great prices. I don't like going to Costco. Anything you want can be delivered. Google Express, you hit a couple buttons, they show up at your door the next day. No more going through no more getting upsold at the food line at Costco, no more waiting in lines and bumping in everyone's cart. It can be delivered. Crowdsourced traffic, Waze. I love that tool. I live in Los Angeles. I'm finding streets in my own neighborhood that I never knew existed. Neighbors, not so happy. Me, love it. G Suite, we use Google as a tool. We used to host our own email, do all these crazy things. Now we can collaborate between our office right here in Denver or Los Angeles and anyone around the world in real time on tools that are relatively free to use, and we make money because we're saving so much time by using them. So I use these tools because I'm old school, and in a world where everybody wants to send a text message or send an email or hide behind social media, I use these tools to free my time up to do things like this, to go to conferences, to go meet people, to have phone conversations, and build relationships the way I believe they should be built. I'm going to leave you with this, reflective of the event today. Mind the gender, but it's a Darwin talk. Thank you.
This is our esteemed panel. And I'm going to have everyone, starting with Donna, just go down and tell us just a little bit about yourself, current things, not entire life stories, and then what fuels your passion for access to justice.
Okay, let's see. Is this on? Is it on? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You have to hold it close.
Okay. I'm Donna Playton, and I am the director of the Honoring Families Initiative at ILES, which is the Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System. And so we're trying to be client-centered. We're always looking for innovative ways to improve access and deployability for court consumers to be able to access our court systems and get a resolution in the end.
I'm Pat Monks. I'm a provider law firm for many of these legal plans. I'm past president of the Group Legal Services Association director, and I'm a current director now. I'm from Houston, Texas. You see those Stros? Daughter goes to Alabama, Roll Tide. Had to stick that in there. And my passion is access to justice. If you're going to ask me about apps and all this stuff, I'm going to have to turn to somebody else. But for the last 3 years, I've attended something called RIAD, which is the International Legal Expense Insurers. And it's Europe, Canada, Japan, and South Africa. And I've learned what legal expense insurance is. The reason I got interested in that is to try to understand what access to justice is. Many of you, we use that word access to justice. What does it really mean? And I'll tell you what it means. The United States is, higher? Yeah, right. Is 52nd in access to justice, whereas first, second, and third is Germany, Belgium, and Holland. What does that mean? Okay, that means an attorney is available. Okay, for a legal situation. We have legal situations in this country which it's just not profitable to have an attorney involved. One of them is auto accidents. Now, I'll be brief, as brief as I can, because I can talk on this subject for a long time.
No, you can't.
Okay, but they don't have contingency fee. Contingency fee is something new in auto accidents in Europe, and so they have to pay your attorney. So that's why legal expense insurance has become popular. With administrative courts, you know, another thing we don't have is in eviction actions. In the state of New York, 99% of the people in New York who go before eviction court do not have representation. And, you know, that's a serious thing for people in New York. In an eviction court, that's like being foreclosed on their house. So even though you think we have all these attorneys coming out of law schools, there just isn't enough profitable legal situations in this country. And I'm passionate about it because I think legal plans are the solution to bringing more access to justice to these people who have everyday problems that's not being addressed.
All right, that's a tough act to follow. I'm Carrie Norris. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at Legal Shield. Many of you may have known us in our former name of Prepaid Legal Services. We are a legal access company. We are up in 50 states, 4 provinces of Canada. We like to say we're a 45-year-old startup. We've been offering legal access and legal services for 45 years, and we are adding technology and convenience and efficiency into the legal services model that we provide. So in addition to that role, I have a bunch of other hats. I am a mother, a community volunteer. I serve on my local school board. So if anyone's interested in public education on the side, it's an equal passion to me as legal services and legal access. So glad to be here, and it's been a fascinating day already.
Hey, my name is Richard Granite, and in a way I've had a long-term career commitment to this concept of A to J, or access to justice. Goes way back. I'm probably the oldest person in this room. I actually helped start the legal services program, started the first paralegal school in the United States that eventually mainstreamed the paralegal concept into every law firm. I saw that as a way for access to justice. Had the first computer lab in any legal education institution because I saw technology as a pathway for basically empowering both lawyers and consumers. Created something called the People's Law Library of Maryland, which was the first legal information portal. Just when the internet started taking off. I remember I was at University of Maryland Law School when I did it. And I tried to get the rest of the faculty at the law school to be interested in what I was doing. And they said, oh, this internet thing, it's a fad, it's going to go away. So I quit and I started a company. And the company provides legal access to A to J by doing everything from providing legal forms for free or for low cost. And I have a company called Direct Law, which grew out of the first virtual law firm, I think, that was in the US around 2000 that I started in Maryland to deliver legal services online. The company is called directlaw.com, which licenses our technology to other lawyers. My challenge is to try and figure out ways to get lawyers to buy into these technologies and to, you know, hopefully with a newer, younger generation, we're going to have a refresh or a pivot. But again, I've yet to see it. But today I am more optimistic. We had an interesting session today, and I keep saying that I think that, you know, Mark Anderson said that software eats every industry. It's going to eat the legal profession too. And we're in a transformative phase. And this thing about unbundled legal services is really about the changing role of the lawyer in the age of new technologies. Thank you.
Well, this is great. This kicks it off and sets Carrie up to talk a little bit about how can we merge the technologies, some of which that Richard was speaking about. And I apologize, Richard, Direct Law is also an Evolve Law member. Sorry about that. But Carrie, tell us a little bit more about how we can merge the technologies with legal plans or legal services or attorneys.
Well, that's an interesting question, and like Richard had said, this isn't a new topic. You know, I started practicing law before the internet and before email. I mean, we actually had libraries, and we actually wrote memos and then walked down the hall and talked to people. I don't consider myself all that old. So but here we are today, right? I mean, as we were driving here, everyone's phones are going off. It's constant email. It's constant conversation. But what does that really mean for what we really do for our livings, right? We're not just in the business of doing email. We're in the business of providing legal services. And so we have to find a way to use current technology to connect real clients with a real legal need with real lawyers who are going to give real services. And in my opinion, we have to find all the different ways. There's not just one, but all the different ways that do that in a faster time than we've done before, and in a way that makes it, as I say, meeting the consumer where they are. Meaning not every client can go to a big firm on a, downtown in a big city between 9 and 5 and ask a couple of questions. First of all, they wouldn't even know where to begin. And second of all, they probably have a job or a family or other commitments. So what we're trying to do is find a way that those people can still get valuable, meaningful, and substantive legal services by either the touch of their finger on a mobile app, which we offer at Legal Shield, that connects you directly to your law firm just by pushing a button, and you can ask any question you want. But it's going to extend beyond that. We have to be able to make appointments virtually. And Adam was talking about some really interesting ideas. I love that idea of AI, that everybody just sets an appointment and knows where they're supposed to be. Those are the kinds of services that, whether it's a legal plan, whether it's a small practitioner's office, whether it's a large firm, they're going to have to integrate those technologies into their everyday service so that the consumer can access the services and then the law firm can provide them with current and modern technology. And that's certainly what we strive to do, to make access easy, affordable, and convenient. And I think it's ever evolving. We don't have the magic secret, nor does anybody else. We do something and then it's going to be outdated. Because contrary to what you heard, the internet's going to stick around a little while.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
Could you say, I'm interested, in this, really a question, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what kind of technologies do the networks of law firms use in connecting? It's not just connecting, but to try and reduce the friction between client and lawyer because millennials don't even want to talk to their lawyers, they just want to text them, right? So you're dealing with a whole set of new technology. I know you have an app that you released. What kind of technologies are employed by the networks of law firms? Because I think your model, you have particular dedicated networks in every state, right? So what goes on there?
Right. Well, I appreciate that question. And I would say, in Legal Shield's example, 45 years ago, we were revolutionary because we put lawyers at the end of a phone that you could call them anytime on any matter without an appointment, right? So 45 years ago, before the internet, that was like unheard of, right? That you could call a lawyer anytime during the day and ask him any question. Well, nobody likes to talk on the phone. You're exactly right. And then nobody wants to leave a message and then call back and then get another message. And so what we're trying to do is cut down that phone tag and like I said, meet the customer where they are. Being able to set appointments either on a website or in their mobile app, ultimately to be able to set their appointments in text so that they can still reach out. A lot of times there is still going to have to be a phone conversation to at least set the parameters so that the lawyer can understand, some of us probably remember the days that your initial consultation was in person, right? They actually came to your office and you sat across the table, and maybe that still happens in some cases. But once we have the phone and the phone's always going to be instrumental, but you've got to get to the phone process faster and easier, whether it's through text, whether it's through email. We work really hard we're working on putting a single telephony system in place so that all of the law firms are connected to one another, to the member, and to us, so that there's a system in place that everyone's connected and talking through the same way and automates it and sets appointments. So that's one of the places we're looking, in addition, of course, to mobile technology.
That's great.
Pat, can you comment a little bit? I know you talked about it a bit in your introduction about the idea of what we could maybe learn from overseas, because you were just at React.
Yeah, I can. 3 years ago, I was in Brussels, and I was on a panel for online dispute resolution, and I never even heard what that was. I just wanted to be on the panel. But I do know, it's interesting. In Europe, now, I'm critical of the European Union, but because of their treaty system, online dispute resolution works in a couple of areas in Airbnb and airlines in dispute, and it's really amazing. Because in Montreal last year, we talked about artificial intelligence. They're to the level of using artificial intelligence to decide administrative hearings. which is way out there. They use online dispute resolution in some provinces in Canada, and it has to be mandated by the government in order to make it work, because they're not interested in the United States. I've already tried to do it in small claims court, and they're just not interested in it. But I would say in Europe, my experience is, as far as on online dispute resolution, they're way ahead of the game, on that sort of thing, because most of their courts are administrative. I would say that was my, that's what I got out of that. That's what we could learn from them.
Okay, and Donna, we were talking a little bit in our prep call about how important is it to think of the consumers, and I think we kind of touched on it, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, sure, I'd be happy to. I'll give a little bit more background. I have actually practiced family law for 25 years, and I taught law school for 17 years. I was a founding member of the Access to Justice Commission in Wyoming, where I come from. And one thing that I found, so when I came to ISLES, we have the Center for Out-of-Court Divorce, which maybe some of you have heard about. And it's an innovative, therapeutic, multidisciplinary divorce center where there are mediators and child development counselors and parenting coordinators and people to help make the whole process of getting a divorce or separation or transitioning non-adversarial. And the service model is excellent, no doubt about it. The service model is excellent. But what we ran into is that we just could not get the clients through the door. It takes a huge culture change in order for people to consider doing something other than going through the court system in order to get a divorce or a separation. That's what they're used to. I think it's going to take a bigger paradigm shift than what we've got right now in order to get people to do that. So after my experience kind of going through winding down our Center for Out-of-Court Divorce, and in addition to some of the other work that we're doing at ISLES, I am a true believer against if you build it, they will come. I think there's a lot more that we need to find out from the court consumers before we up here decide this is what you need, this is what is going to be good for you, this is better for you. In Court Compass, what we did is we did an inventory of all of the self-help resources that are available through the courts. And there's a lot of them. I mean, they go anywhere from just forms that you fill out to automated forms. We do have some states in the United States doing things like ODR, but we've got, all the way up to artificial intelligence in a few places. We've got triple LTs, limited license legal technicians places, but we've got all these computerized technology services available through courts. And now what we found is that really people aren't really using those. Not that much. They're using some, but not others, and certainly not to the degree that I believe that people that innovated, created, and put those online were hoping. They were hoping that that would really help a lot with some of the access to justice issues, especially for self-represented litigants, and that people really aren't using them. So what we've done is we've backed up and we've said, look, what we need to do is we need to figure out not only what does the consumer want, but what is the consumer willing to use for certain types of legal actions. At ISLES, we're really focusing on family law. We're focusing on something that we're calling a domestic relations ecosystem. We're trying to design now. We've backed way up and we're doing design sprints. We've partnered with Stanford, with Margaret Hagan from Stanford and with Dan Jackson at the New Law Lab in order to do design sprints to bring court consumers in to say, what do you want? What would you be willing to use? Is this something that would help you not only access it, but actually be able to use it all the way through to the end where you would finally get a resolution? So I think that figuring out what court consumers, not only what they want, but what they'll use, and maybe it's going to be a shift. Maybe it's going to have to start small and you're going to have to scale it up more as people become more comfortable with using things other than the traditional means that they're used to. I think that's a very important aspect of anything that we decide to do and build out.
If I can, I'm going to tie together both what Donna said and what Richard said, which is, and I think everyone here probably believes this, and I heard this a lot today at the ISLES conference. Law is a relationship business. That's what it is, right? So all the technology we're talking about and the things we see, they're tools. They can't be the only replacement. They're tools, someone said earlier today, they're tools in the toolbox. So they're tools to help us connect so that then the clients can come back time and time again because they have a relationship with a personal issue. And that might be why, particularly in a divorce setting, which is a deeply personal, although I was intrigued by when you said you had therapeutic services in their divorce process. That intrigued me. But it's personal. And so they want to be able to access it quickly and easily with technology, but you still have to have a personal service. And so maybe that's a little bit the disconnect. So we always try to look at what's the technology that allows the connection to the lawyer who's going to actually provide the meaningful relationship.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the process sometimes gets in front of what's important. You know, I heard this once. If you want to get rid of illegal drugs, then legalize all drugs, but require that all drugs have to be bought through Comcast customer service. And, you know, so sometimes we put the procedure first. And I think with Carrie and I, she mentioned something that's, well, she didn't say it. She said it in the car. But she said you got to meet people where they're at, okay? And that's it. So I think some legal services, you know, like we could be more administrative, you know, that could be done online, maybe like traffic tickets. But something as personal as, you know, family law or something along those lines, you know, need a more personal touch. And she's right. You know, this is something we discussed in Europe at the last one in Ireland. The business is the relationship. And if technology doesn't improve the relationship, then we need to not use that technology.
Yeah, so I have a very different view of that. It really depends on the kind of transaction and how dense that relationship has to be. Because I view a large component of law, as I said this afternoon, as information. And information is a form of code. And to the extent that information is software, you can create tools which empower people to do things themselves. So in family law, which is an area that I work on and actually do a lot of work with self-represented litigants at a very low price point, we see that they can master those transactions pretty much themselves because we've empowered them now with software. So software becomes another intervening factor in the way in which the lawyer serves their clients. Ideally, the lawyers should work at what I call the top of their license, which means they do what they were really trained to do best. But there are many, many transactions which can be managed by the self-represented person with a little bit of legal advice. So, in the prepaid legal industry, you can help me with this, has a penetration rate in Fortune 500 companies of only about 12%. I view prepaid legal insurance as excellent value. Obviously, these thousands of millions of employees in Fortune 500 companies don't see it the same way, and 88% or 85% of them look to other solutions other than prepaid legal to get their legal problems solved. Do you have any data on what those other people do to get their legal problems solved? You follow what I'm saying on that, right? You know, the penetration rate in Fortune 500 companies by Hyatt, by our Legal Shield hasn't done that much, but probably the same. Only about 12, 13% of employees actually sign up. I don't know why. I think it's a great value. What's the disconnect between those perceptions and their lack of understanding of the great value in prepaid legal insurance?
Well, first of all, I would say I agree completely that it is a great value.
I knew you would.
So I do.
I set that up.
You did. And I will say, if I could figure out exactly why only 12% of the people that hear about it purchase it in a group setting, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, right? I mean, I'd be a marketer, not a lawyer. So I think it's a number of things. I mean, one, I mean, just getting out there and getting the message heard. I think also, I mean, this goes back to a lot of the work the Futures Commission did and a lot of other folks have done. A lot of people don't even know that they have a legal issue. So the health insurance industry, right? I mean, there was a time when nobody had insurance, and then all of a sudden now everyone has insurance. I mean, a lot of people, you pick your job based on, oh, what kind of insurance do you have, right? And because that's a benefit that your employer has chosen and is putting out there. I think the legal industry is a little behind. They just haven't convinced everybody that this is something they all need to have. And part of that's because traditionally law firms, whether they're in a legal plan or outside of a legal plan, they're not really accessible, right? I mean, they're generally in big high-rises, or if you're in a small town, they're behind closed doors, and they're gone for long lunch breaks, right? They're just hard to find. And so I think a lot of people, when you're sitting in an employee setting and you're hearing about a benefit and then you're going to select it, they probably don't yet know that they really need a lawyer for everyday kinds of things.
I see it a little bit differently. I think that many people don't like to pay a continuing payment because they're transactional. They just want to pay when I have an actual problem because they can't think in insurance terms, which is a slightly different issue, I think.
I think there's also, if you look at somebody who's a millennial, and I think we talked about this a little bit, someone who's a millennial, they don't understand the concept of I'm going to prepaid for this, and there is, like, I totally believe in this education gap. So what, as the Group Legal Services Association folks that are here and people up here, what can we do to explain to people that you need this type of prepaid insurance, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I have a little bit different experience. In Europe, it's a little bit different. The participation rates are much higher.
Very high. Very high.
And one of the reasons is, for example, in Germany, they sell it as part of their car insurance, like you would PIP or uninsured motorists. And what happens when you get in an accident in most of those countries in Europe? Well, you contact your insurance company, find out who the legal expense insurance company is to represent you. Why? Because there's, in very few of those countries, there's a contingency fee. Now, contingency fee is a new thing that's introduced in England, in Spain, in Ireland, but it's very small rates. And so they've had 100 years of legal expense insurance in which to, in a culture, be aware of what this product is. And it is a product like today, we believe that we need health insurance, okay? That's part of our culture. You see what I'm saying? And so that's it. It's a different legal culture that created those high percentages. Austria, it's almost 50%. You know, you wouldn't be caught dead with that legal expense insurance. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. We have a little bit different culture, legal culture, because we have so many legal situations in which there is no profit margin. You see what I'm saying? That's the problem, and that's why we need. And I agree.
Pat, do you mean no profit margin for the attorney?
For the attorney, just not profitable. Every day I'm telling people, you know, you got a situation there, but you know, I'm going to have to charge you this, that, and the other. And
So
unless
doesn't that lend itself to some of the things that Donna was talking about, like the triple LT in Washington?
Right, being able to send those people not to a lawyer, but to some kind of online service, self-help, DIY, gives them some information, because there are, I mean, if Pat can't help them, then we should be able as an industry and a profession to give them something that could help them.
Donna, did you want to talk a little bit more about your family law example, or?
Well, sure. I would talk about how it might be a little bit different than other areas of the law. So with ODR, started with eBay and PayPal, right? I mean, family law is a little bit different than like you got a shirt and it, you know, had a hole in the pit or something, whatever's going to be on eBay. I also think that with family law, and boy, these chairs are so uncomfortable. That I'm just going to be like, oh, like this. That family law itself it's not like you can even say that family law is the same by state or by court or by judge. I mean, it can just differ so much that I think it's hard to build it out sometimes. There's general procedures that you're able to build out, but in some of the research that we've done at ILS, we found, like, for example, in Colorado in 2016, 67% of all family law cases involved at least one self-represented litigant. And so there are a lot of people that are, A, not able to afford attorneys. That's the primary reason that they don't get them. 2, they don't want to give up all of the control that they have over their case. And 3, they kind of feel, a lot of them, that they can do a lot of it themselves. But with family law, the underlying laws are often really complicated and probably unnecessarily complicated. I'll give you an example. We would have to send clients to go get confidential affidavits notarized, right? And I mean, I just recently bought a house on my phone. I just pulled my phone out, the contract's on there. I like picked what kind of font I wanted, and I dinged it. And you know, I bought a house that way, but yet I have to send people to King Soopers or the bank or something like that in order to get a document notarized. So there's part of it is process. Part of it can be that, you know, you have people, especially people that can't afford attorneys or choose not to pay for attorneys, where maybe the wife got pregnant by somebody other than the husband. So now you've got a paternity issue, not just a divorce case. Or one of the children's in foster care. You've got grandparents that want to have visitation. So I think if you have these cases and they're kind of streamlined, straightforward, A to B, remainder to C, you can run those through, no doubt about it. And that might be a large percentage, I'm not sure. But I think that there's these other complexities that sometimes make it really difficult. Another thing that we found in the study that we did called Cases Without Counsel is that most people wanted a lawyer, or at least a legal professional at some point in the process. And today what we heard at the conference is that in the Canadian study that was done, 86% of the self-represented litigants were still trying to find a lawyer to help them with some part of their case. So I agree that we've got to build in that kind of human touch somewhere along the way for when people need that, but that they don't need it throughout the whole thing, but there's going to be other times that they do need it. Another thing that came up today that I thought was interesting is sometimes people, they do just want to be heard. They just want somebody to listen to them. Family law is such a personal thing that people are not cutting, usually, all ties that bind. They're going to have some continuing relationship into the future. So how they deal with it can be really an important thing in order to maintain, you know, best interest of the children, some semblance of consistency with the parenting afterwards, all of these things. That's kind of the therapeutic part that we're talking about in the Center for Out-of-Court Divorce, is how do you help people figure out how to do this in a way where they can maintain and survive and come out not completely destroyed at the end of the process.
Okay, so
So I think we have a question from David has patiently been, and
Yeah,
then,
David,
and then
go
we
ahead.
can jump in.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Isn't the elephant in the room the model rules of professional conduct? I mean, I go to a lot of these A to J events, and I have for the last couple of years. I'm not an attorney, and I look at this, and I look at the huge effort that's going into chatbots and AI and all these contortions, when there's clearly a huge problem. I mean, if 80% or 90% of people don't have access, and panel after panel and event after event goes through it. Like, what are all the things we can do except address the central problem, which is a restriction on supply and innovation? And I'm personally frustrated. I run a blockchain technology company, so I'm working on the tech side, but I listen to this objectively as a non-attorney, and it just feels ridiculous. I mean, there's a monopoly.
Yeah, I think-
David, are you a lawyer?
No.
Okay,
not
so
aware.
when you say the model rules, you can't just say all the model rules, because to have the model rules, that's what makes it a profession. I think you're probably referring to the particular rule which says that there can't be private equity in a law firm. Is that one of the rules you're thinking about?
I think he's talking about the unauthorized practice of law and
Anything that overtly restricts supply, innovation, in a human sense.
I think the other piece of it is that I think I'd like to hear from each of the panelists, and I apologize because we didn't talk about this in the prep, but the access to justice problem, it's not just for low-income Americans.
Right.
And I'm doing all this research on the triple LT because it interests me, because for years, I've gone around 2 years now, and I just hear people saying, oh, it's not working, and it doesn't work, and this and that. Well, you know why it doesn't work? It doesn't work because the lawyers don't want it to work, because they think that it's going to infringe on their practice. And this is what I'm hearing from the actual lawyers, not just from the triple LTs. And triple LT is actually aimed at families that earn sort of $75,000 to $100,000. So that is part of the access to justice, because can you think of what would happen if you have all these unrepresented people creating these, like the human problem of having a poor divorce, either on both sides or one side? I mean, it impacts children's lives forever. So I just think I'd like to hear from the panel about the broader access to justice, and folding in what David said about opening up the profession in some way.
I can give you 3 reasons why the triple LT idea is a bad idea.
Sure.
And let's look at it this way. 25 years ago, I was an advocate of that idea because I thought it was important that non-lawyers have a capacity to maybe give limited legal advice, like we have the Citizens Advice Bureau in England, which I had studied, and I had started this paralegal business, and I just thought that was really an important way, and there was an ABA commission on this. Anyway, that was 25 years ago, before we had the internet. Now, 25 years later, this is a 25-year-old idea that's being brought up to date in a way that makes no sense to the people who are doing the legal technician work, and here's why. The solo lawyer has a difficult enough time getting clients, and their price points are not much different than what the triple IT's price points are. So the triple IT is going to go to University of Washington, they're going to incur a $25,000 student loan they're going to have to pay off. They're going to open up some storefront. There's no teaching about technology in the triple IT program, so they're going to suffer from the same deficits that law students suffer when they get out of law school. And their capacity to survive, other than triple ITs being maybe employed by legal aid agencies, if they have the budget to support them, won't survive as self-surviving entities. I've seen no data I've seen enough data to see the failure rate among non-lawyers who offer services from a retail operation in competition with solos and small firms. When you look at the prices that they're charging, it's not much different than what the solo. Will's an expert on this. You agree with me on this? Sometimes lawyers charge less, and the target market is 70,000 to 100,000, which is most of America. It is true, the legal profession is only serving 15%. So there is, from my point of view, the deregulation that should actually happen is that anybody can do anything, but you can't call yourself a lawyer unless you went to law school and you became a member of the bar. Then you say, I'm a lawyer. But other than that, anybody should be able to give legal advice. Anybody able should do this. Why do you have to certify people to do it? If you want real deregulation, anybody should be able to do anything, but you can't call yourself a lawyer unless you go to law school and you become a member of the bar. What's wrong with that idea?
Panel?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you can tell me that it's going to harm people? Forget it. It's not, there's no data to support that.
Yeah, I'm going to probably not respond to that, but
Yeah.
because I was thinking, well, could anyone be a doctor?
Different.
provide-
It's a
but-
bad analogy.
But the similar analogy that has worked is in the legal or in the medical profession, they do have people who can provide some type of medical benefit or service
Right.
that aren't the MDs, right? They have nurse practitioners and PAs, surgical assistants. So they have a variety of things.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was
Not
going to say
nurse practitioners aren't.
their model has been that all of them, one, they do go to school and they have their accreditation and their services and their certifications, but they also all work for or with some kind of certified MD.
True, but that's
So-
it's a bad analogy because the medical profession has a total supported subsidy system. They're not like free agents. We're dealing with two different economies. You can't compare the health economy and the legal economy, which is essentially a free market economy. We're trying to make the health economy into a free market economy, which will probably collapse after that. But health goods don't lend themselves to free market economics. And law is a distorted system because we have a monopoly of lawyers who only serve 15% of the population. It's a total abomination in my view. How can you justify that kind of regulation when you're not serving 85% of the population?
Well, hang on just a second. Let's put this in a different perspective. You're saying that 15% of the lawyers have a monopoly on all.
No,
of
I
the-
didn't say
No,
that.
no.
I said the legal profession only serves 15 to
Yeah,
20%
so-
And so
of the
we-
American public.
Well, let's address that. One of the reasons is what I said earlier. Most of the legal situations in this country do not have a marketable profit margin for lawyers to make money. So what you're suggesting is open the door, let anybody perform any kind of legal services for anyone. Only lawyers can be the only ones that say they're attorneys. Is that what you said?
I did say that, yeah.
Okay. And you think that's fine?
I do.
Okay. And why do you think that's fine?
Because we'll have lots of innovative solutions that will come into play, which will solve people's problems.
Right. And you
People
have,
will get their problems solved not by being billed on an hourly basis, but by a solution which solves their problem at a price that they can afford. That's the way the market economy usually works.
and no regulation of any of those people or any kind of education
You must
on
be
those
from
market
Texas.
solutions, on those legal solutions at
Okay.
all.
Let's keep it nice.
I'm sorry.
No, I was.
I have just heard something
Yeah, I know.
new.
Yeah,
It's-
I figured
and
I figured we'd get you
I'm
going.
being nice.
I figured I'd get you going with that comment.
No, Richard was the one who said you must be from Texas. That's what I was calling Richard out, Pat. You go.
We also have the Astros.
Sure.
All right, so we have a question.
I like the debate. It's lively.
Yes.
It's interesting, and I'm glad that there's passions in the room around this topic because it's really, really important. So that's all cool. I wanted just to, if we could, switch gears back to the topic around the technology. We obviously have a number of panelists on the floor that are dealing with a lot of technology. Certainly I wonder if we could open up the conversation around how the internet is shifting and some of the real positive things that we're seeing as far as automating client intake, streamlining the document preparation, really starting to build efficiency into the practice of law such that we could start to offer lower cost, flat rate, unbundled services and bring that accessibility through some of these technological capacities that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. And what are some of the tools that you guys are most excited about? How is Legal Shield from a standpoint, and certainly Richard, how are you guys implementing some of these things, and what do you see for the future?
Well, first of all, I want to pick up on the word that you said, which is important, and I think it sort of solves some of the debate between these two, which is efficiency, right? I mean, you can do different legal services in different ways, the more and more efficiently you can do them. So I look at it as we serve customers, but we also serve lawyers and law firms that are in our network. So I'm always looking at how can I help them be more efficient so that they can maybe get that one client who can't pay them more than a flat fee of $500, or that client that only pays them a monthly fee of $20. They can service them the more and more efficient they are in their business. So ways that you can do that. One thing we try to do is we have online questions and answers. And the idea is that the consumers can go there whether they're our customers or not. You can go there and you can find out some general information. Maybe that's sufficient, and they go away and they feel like they have a little bit of information and they can take care of a few things and they can resolve an issue. But what we hope is they think, oh, well, now I have an understanding of what my legal issue, because I did some online research and I did some Q&A and I answered some questions, and then they can go talk to a lawyer and find a lawyer. It's faster, it's more efficient, because they're already a little bit ahead of the game. So that maybe they already know the process that's ahead. So we're trying to minimize some of the back and forth that's required. So that's one of the things we're doing, is sort of a chat bot type of engagement for questions and answers between our customers and legal Q&A, so that we can get them, when they come in the door to talk to the lawyer, they're already a little bit further ahead. I think that's one thing. Obviously, I mean, there's the simple things about how they communicate, the chat, the text, the email. Those are simple things. And then, of course, all the things you said about I mean, documents, we have programs where on your mobile app, you take a picture of your traffic ticket or your contract and it goes straight to your lawyer, and then they look at it right away and they call you back and they answer all your questions. Trying to make it, so the idea being is when you get that speeding ticket, you don't wait until like the day before court and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot I'm supposed to be in court tomorrow, right? We're trying to train people that as soon as they get it, while you're still sitting in your car, not while you're driving, but while you're still sitting in your car, take a picture, go straight to your law firm, and then you kind of can not think about it because someone's going to take care of it for you. So these are some tools we're trying to use for technology to make sure, and then when that comes into the law firm, helping them have some technology to process that, and where do they file it, and how does it go through their system as well, all to make them more efficient so that they can do the things they want to do, which is they want to be lawyers. Right? I mean, for those of the lawyers in the room, isn't that why you went to school? You want to be a lawyer and you want to provide legal services because you want to help people. And so I think it's really finding those things that allow lawyers to do, like you said, practice at the top of their game, because this is what they want to do. They don't want to do document management, they don't want to do scanning, and they don't want to do this stuff. I mean, that's not why any of us went to law school. So finding all those ways, I mean, we look at it as both technology do we provide to the customer, through our mobile app, but that also connects directly to our law firms to make them faster, more efficient, so they can spend their time being real lawyers.
Here's a quick example about efficiency and non-efficiency. About 5 years ago, I consulted with one of your competitors because they were obligated under their plan to provide wills to everybody. How were they providing wills? Client calls up, has a telephone call. They only have like 2 lawyers in the state. A lawyer writes notes down on a yellow pad about the client. Maybe has a little bit of a substantive conversation. Hands the yellow pad to the paralegal. Paralegal then reviews this, cuts and pastes a will out of Word. So we proposed a system where the client would simply answer an online questionnaire. The client would not actually see the assembled will because it generated a first draft for the lawyer to review it and then either amended or call the client back to get some clarification. Out of the 100 lawyers that were in their network, we had tremendous kickback because they said it was not lawyer-like for us to do it this way. That was 5 years ago. Maybe there's been a change. But if they were to adopt the more efficient method, because they're on a fixed price, they're getting a fixed price to do the will, or they're getting a fixed per capita. So the more that they can process design those processes, the more they have time to really practice law and to have a richer environment. So everything that can be done, I would argue, through software or through paralegals should be done by that, leaving the lawyer to do what the lawyer was really trained to do.
So I have to ask if that was my company.
That wasn't
I need to
yours.
know where you were.
It wasn't yours.
Because someone's in trouble.
It wasn't
because
yours.
we make sure that our customers can fill out a questionnaire for a will, coming soon, other agreements like prenups and some of those. They fill it out on their mobile phone, and again, it goes directly to the law firm.
I know you did that
And
acquisition.
so-
It wasn't yours. It was somebody
and so,
else.
And the reason is because that's what the customer wants, right? It's not because we're brilliant or great. It's because that's what the customer wants and deserves. And really and truly, that's what the lawyer is valuable at, not at reading the answers, right? You're exactly right. The lawyer is valuable at, taking something that's already kind of technologically ahead of the game. We're doing that now with business and corporations and LLCs where you fill out a questionnaire and it goes through so that the lawyer kind of comes in a little bit further and
Right.
then looks at it.
Right.
So that the lawyer's not taking handwritten notes and scribbling it down and starting. So it's a merger of just something spitting it out, but we're putting lawyers into the process, but bringing them in after there's some technology to help them be faster.
Have you guys done that for family law yet? Being the fact that there's a lot of different variations of forms all throughout the United States, and I'd like to revisit that with you.
We've done it in about 20 states.
Okay.
No fault divorce in 20 states. It's one of our big product lines, not through the company. It's hard to do. You have to keep them up to date. It's a big capital investment to do it, but it's a very healthy line of business for us. For $39, I can get you a divorce. Can't beat that price, right?
Oh,
Sign
we have
me up.
another question up here.
Could
Sorry.
not beat that price. So I just have a question because I'm listening to all of this, and I think a lot of what I'm hearing, what I heard at the conference today, is there's definitely a cultural shift that's going on, whether it wants to or not, and we're forcing it in some way. And like this is a fantastic conversation about sort of how we're not thinking necessarily about how the lawyer provides legal services, but how the customer or the client or whatever it is we want to refer to it as is interested in the delivery of services. And so I think each of you has a unique voice in that, and I would like to know just briefly from each one of you what your suggestions are or your advice is with regards to how does this profession, as it evolves, talk to the culture of how that shift is occurring and how we use that and pivot ourselves. Each one of you is very different in your voice, so I'd like to hear, no debate, just how you think that's
No debate, okay.
Well, I mean,
And
like,
briefly, because we're,
Well, I do have an opinion about that. And the opinion is the strategy is the die or retire strategy. You have to have an older generation of lawyers who retire and are replaced by a younger generation of lawyers, a millennial generation of lawyers, who have the internet in their DNA and who can identify with those clients. Social change does not happen overnight. It happens generationally. And we are now at the cusp of a new generation coming into power who will be more reflective of the demands of their own consumers, their peers. That's the way change happens. I don't see it happening realistically in any other way. And even the ethical rules might change over time. It happens generationally unless you have like government intervention. So in England, they were so dissatisfied with the condition of lawyers regulating their own profession, they deregulated the profession and changed those rules about equity ownership in law firms. They usurped the profession because the profession was so defensive about change that it lost its power to control. That's not going to happen in this country. It's not going to happen in the short term, certainly.
So I understand. I'm with you, Richard. I'm curious when we step our shoes into the customer's perspective, which is what we're all as lawyers trying to figure out how to tap into.
Yeah.
What does each one of your perspectives in this like world that we're talking about? What is your suggestion or your advice?
Okay, so I'll give you mine. I think it depends on the client or the customer, and I think it depends on the legal issue. So I know I was listening in about a study that was done that said, you know, if everything does need to be online, that leaves some people out. Like they don't feel comfortable with that at all. And so I think that you have to take that into consideration. I think if you're talking about traffic tickets, landlord-tenant, debtor-creditor issues, some kind of small claims thing, you might have a little bit more leeway to do certain things. I think you're going to have some clients, like, for example, unbundling. I don't think it's for every client. I don't think it's for every kind of case. So you've got to be able to be astute enough to figure out, to screen, to see if the client is capable of doing some of the things on his or her own, or if they need to be walked through. I mean, you have to consider people that have the inability to read, the inability to fully understand the English language. Some people feel more comfortable with computers than others. You know, we're talking about millennials always wanting to not see their attorneys and contact them you know, with their phones or an app or something. But, you know, I had a problem with law students not wanting to actually call their clients and get them on the phone and talk to them. And they could have solved a lot more issues just by doing that, as opposed to wanting to send them a text or an email or something. So to me, I think it depends, and I think that that we are going through a transition and that not every case is going to be the same, and somebody needs to be able to figure out what's going to work. Pat?
Yeah, my opinion on this and what I've read is I think millennials and people really are not interested in hiring lawyers. They're interested in getting their legal solutions resolved, okay? And so, you know, the question is, if lawyers want to be active, they have to be relevant, okay? They have to be relevant. They can be relevant by communicating with the clients. Now, there's a fella named what's his name? Foonberg. Jay Foonberg wrote a book, you know, and the one thing he said that stayed with me, you know, for 33 years is, what is the most important thing to a customer, a client, when he's seeking advice from an attorney and representing him. And the most important thing is not cost, it's not even competence, it's he wants somebody to care about his case, okay? And that is how we become relevant. How do we get somebody, by using technology, to make sure that we use our services to let these people know that we care about their case? And that is how we remain relevant. We're still only, I agree with Richard's, the 15%. I actually thought it was lower than that. But I think that's the issue, is relevance. And that's what we talked about in Europe. They're concerned about that too. Is legal expense insurance or attorneys relevant?
Carrie, you can have the final word, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. So that's a really good question, right? And I sort of use the phrase of, and Pat said this, you have to meet them where they're at. I see myself personally in between two generations, right? I have the mother who doesn't use the internet, can barely text me, and is on my porch every evening wanting to tell me something, right? Because she doesn't want to call me or text me. I have a teenager who is sitting across the dinner table from me, and I'll ask him a question and he'll text me the answer, right? So I'm in the middle of both of these worlds trying to, it's the same thing. I mean, if I'm looking at them not as my legal clients, but as like my relationships, I'm trying to meet both of them where they are. I will say, I think we're a little further along. I would give our profession some credit. I mean, and a lot of them are in this room involved with Evolve Law. We are making changes. We are moving forward, not as fast as we should. I mean, clearly not as fast as we should when we're only serving 15%. But we're getting there, right? For an old profession, we're getting there slowly. And so I think it's, I mean, one, it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think, two, it's going to take, honestly, the people in this room that are willing to kind of think about it and then take some chances and figure it out. And then I think ultimately to ask the customer. I mean, survey them, talk to them. What did you like about talking to me by phone? What did you like about our email? Ask them. And then eventually you can kind of find out that different people are going to want different things. But I think, I mean, and to use Mary's word, we're evolving. Growing pains are hard no matter what we're doing, but I think we are growing, and it's, you know, it's a profession of professionals, and for the most part, we're pretty smart, right? So sometimes if we get out of our own way, I think we'll get an answer, and sometimes we got to let regulation kind of get out of the way. We got to let, you know, one generation out of the way. We got to not listen to one generation too much. It's really just going to be a balance of meeting people and understanding what they want. I think we'll get there. I think we're a long way from it, but we're certainly further than we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I think there's opportunity, right? And that's why these newer companies that are doing things differently, like Richard and Adam and others in the room, it's because there's an opportunity to think differently. Whether it's an old company like mine that's doing things differently, whether it's brand new companies that are adding technology. I mean, what an exciting time to be here and to be able to try to figure this out. And I think we'll get there. It's just going to take a little bit of practice and, you know, trial and error.
Okay, so I want to thank the panel, and I want to tell you that, you know, I have a law degree, but I grew up in accounting. I can tell you that a business where you've got headroom of whether it's 80 or 85%, that's a huge market. So the lawyers that are going to be nimble and evolve, thank you for the shout out. It could be a drinking game too, but the lawyers who are going to be innovative and come up with ways of meeting the people in the right place and figuring out what the clients need, those are the lawyers that are going to win, regardless of whether we agree or disagree on the triple LT medical analogy. But I want to thank everyone. A round of applause for our panelists.
I want to take a look just for a moment as to what we've tried to attempt for, sorry, I'll get closer, how we've attempted to provide access to justice. And the way I look at it is some of the things we've talked about tonight were that there's many ways to provide that access. There are the apps, the great opportunity for the millennials, for those of us who just want quick access. And then there's the legal plan, a great opportunity to pay a fee and have access to an attorney that you can call at all hours of the day and night. We took it one step further, and we say also there's a way just to sit across the table again and talk to a lawyer some evening at a law night. So my background goes back to being a public defender over 20 years ago, and that's really where I got my commitment and desire to provide access to justice. My boss back in the day said that this was our job, to counsel people on the law, counsel people on their rights, and advocate for them, and that's what we do, and we do it well. I've held that all these years because I feel like that's what we need to be doing. After that, I spent the last 20 years of my career as a provider firm attorney for Legal Shield, and I've had the benefit and the privilege of being able to serve people and provide access to justice by being that provider firm attorney. But last year, my law firm said, you know what, look, we need to raise the bar. We need to do more. And until we are not number 52 in providing access to justice in this country, we need to access and do more for people. So we decided to create a series of law nights. And it's a very grassroots effort. It can be determined to be a very small amount of attempt to reach people. But first of all, we decided we're going to find an organization that we feel committed to. Find something that we knew. Warren Village is an organization that is transitional housing here in Denver for families, single parents who are trying to improve and better their lives. Warren Village has a global view of how they want to help people move on with their lives. It's housing, it provides education for their children, it provides classes for the parents. We at Riggs Abney thought we could add the level of providing legal access to them and empower those families to have the ability to sit down and talk to a lawyer about their legal needs. Because as we know, a lot of people can't just pick up the phone. A lot of people don't know what their legal needs even are. So we contacted Warren Village and just asked them if they'd be interested in having us come in and meet with the residents and talk about their legal issues. This was met with resounding enthusiasm. They were thrilled to have us, and it was really quite easy. We set up an evening one night where our attorneys, 7 volunteers, went into their place, and as Carrie mentioned, we met them where they were at. We went to their place of residence in an evening, and we sat down and we talked to them. We talked about their legal issues, we consulted, and we tried to help them. I think it was a huge success. Several residents came in, they got their questions answered. So we did it again, and we decided, let's try this again, but let's raise the bar, and let's add the technology piece, which is really what we're tying into tonight. The technology. No, it's not the complex technology, some of the things that we've been talking about. It's very basic. We brought our laptops. We went in and we showed them how to find links, how to find forms, printed off some documents for them, and we just empowered them of how to use technology with their legal needs. Because at the end of the day, when our night's over, they're still going to have their legal issues, and they're still going to need to know how to get help. And if we're not there, or they can't pick up the phone, or they don't have a few $100s an hour to hire a lawyer, they need to be empowered what they can do themselves. So we shared that information with them and took it to the next level. After that experience, we decided we needed to diversify a little bit. In our law firm, everyone was on board with this. The attorneys were excited about it. They felt they were making a difference. So we chose to look to who else can we help? Where else can we reach out? So we looked to local schools. And these are some of our lawyers going in and doing the volunteer work at Warren Village. So we reached out to a couple different schools in the local Denver community. For those of you around here might know these schools. We first reached out to the Girls Athletic Leadership School. They are the only all-girls public school in the state of Colorado. Reached out to them, and they were very excited about this prospect. They are in an extremely poor neighborhood, extremely diverse, and there's a lot of immigration issues they have. We're currently working with them to take this same program into their school. But in the meantime, another school came in communication with us, and this is the email that the teacher and I communicated back and forth when I said, hey, can we come in and provide these law nights for you guys? Another poor school in a very underprivileged neighborhood, families living with families, huge Hispanic population who don't speak the language, and there's so many struggles. These parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. The idea of even ever talking to a lawyer is beyond their comprehension. The teacher was thrilled about it. So we went in, and they were great. They set the rooms up, they put out tables and chairs and had sign up, and they were so excited about this. We doubled the attorneys. We had 15 attorneys go in, and we had double the amount of families that came in. And this time we went another step. We still had the computers, we still had the smartphones, we had printers, we did all the same things, and we brought bilingual attorneys and some staff to translate. So again, we just tried to do a little bit more. And tying this all back into why we're here tonight, the point is that until we have more access, until we can get further in more people having the legal plans, the legal shield, the access to pick up a phone and call a lawyer, until we are at past number 52 and providing access throughout this country, we're doing something small. Every step, every little thing we believe makes a difference. So whether you're a lawyer or whether you have some technology that you would like to share or like to collaborate with us, this is my contact information. We'd love to be a part of anything you guys might want to do, or we'd love to have you guys as attorneys be a part of it. Thank you.